Lee, what's the best position here or? Okay guys, welcome. My name is Rolf. Langsdorf. My nick on PerlMonks is Langs. You might have seen me there. I'm a great guy. I'm awesome. I had a great life, have great hobbies. Next conference I will tell you more. I want to tell you something about the Camel Paradox. And I will rush because I have so much to say about Perl that I might go a little bit into the pause. Let's start with a little anecdote. You know, you go to an IT meeting or you go to a private meeting and you disguise that you're working with Perl. And nowadays, the reactions are quite strong. And there was this guy who was actually, I think, from India. He works as a project manager in Frankfurt and said, "Oh yeah, Perl. Yeah, I still had to learn it at university. Awful language, awful." And I'm, okay, so what do you use? "Oh, Java, Java, great, awesome, huge libraries, clean syntax, IDE support. I mean, standard teaching language, it's no problem to find employees." And I said, "Well, yes, granted, if you have an IDE, you don't need to program, you just click and you have something and you can pretend to be a programmer." Okay, the conversation went on. I tried to change the subject. Half an hour later, "Bash, I love it. Just type in something, immediate interactive results, intuitive, short syntax. Do what I mean." Imagine my reaction. What the fuck? How can he bash Perl, at the same time saying Java, mentioning Java and bash at the same time? And the problem is he was talking about two separate problem domains where he's using Java and where he's using bash. If we go into an e-learning site, actually like Code Academy, and we look what kind of languages are offered, we will hardly find Perl. How can this be? Because if you look at these languages separately, bash doesn't scale. I mean, you don't want to write a multi-module thing in bash. Python and JavaScript, you don't want to use it in the command line. JavaScript is rudimentary. It's kind of, it's a baby Perl, actually. There are so many meta languages coming up, like TypeScript or I forgot all the names, just to add functionality to JavaScript. PHP, inconsistent. Ruby, the only thing about PHP is that it has a stronghold in the web market. Ruby came up as Perl done right. Do you remember? If you look into the details of Ruby, it's practically a love child of Smalltalk and Perl. But it won with this DSL ability and a Smalltalkish object orientation. So we say in German, auf allen Hochzeiten tanzen. If someone tries to dance on all weddings, I mean, to be part of all parties at the same time. And this is what Perl does. Perl is extremely versatile. You can use it on the command line, you can use it for scripting, short scripts, you can use it for modular programming, for bigger projects, you can use it for functional programming, object-oriented programming, large projects with hundreds of dependencies. Just look at Moose. It's a great glue language. So what's going wrong? For me, personally, it's totally fascinating. I don't know if you know this classic 80s song from Chaka Khan, "I'm Every Woman, It's All in Me." This is Perl for me. This is why I love Perl. because I love programming. I love all these problem domains. I don't want to switch the language if I do a command line thing, and I don't want to switch the language if I go to bigger projects. But for other people, they are overwhelmed and irritated when they just come for one problem domain, and they are confronted with the other with the tools which are designed for other problem domains, and then I'm frustrated, and that hampers Perl's profile in marketing. My central thesis, and I want to talk about it now, the success of a language depends not on the set of features that you have, it depends on the acceptance by central multipliers. And I will show you what kind of multipliers I mean and what I mean by acceptance. Multipliers live in a niche, and they have special problem domains. And these rules over the evolution of a language, survival of the fittest, because multipliers are like parents, and they create children. So, overview in short, Perl's profile is chaotic, flexibility needs to be managed, conflicts needs to be identified and resolved, concepts need to be better defined and marketed, we need to convince the multipliers, and new features must fit into this framework, into this mindset, how to see Perl. And I think we can even benefit from the disadvantages that I showed you. Let's look shortly into the history of Perl. You might know the history of Perl. Perl started to be very successful with Perl 4. And Perl 4, back in the 90s, Perl and Tcl were the dominant dynamic languages. You could even find articles where they were speculating about the death of Java in the 90s. Perl 4 was Bash on steroids. It was a compressed shell. It had compressed shell syntax plus the advantages of seed and awk. Lots of magics. Do what I mean allowed intuitive shorthand. And people which came from Bash were convinced about Perl. Sysadmins on Unix were the main target group. And the open source culture made Perl available everywhere. And then in '94 came Perl 5. And Perl 5 was designed to extend Perl 4. This means it had to be backwards compatible, but introduced a lot of technology which was needed for a much more important language. I don't know if you knew it, but writing modules with use was only possible with Perl 5. Lexical scopes of declarations, Perl 5. Closures, functional constructs, Perl 5. Pragmas like strict to tame the drawbacks of Perl 4. Python's O concept was recycled. Modules allowed now larger projects. Clever recycling kept Perl 4 alive. For example, we didn't use class, we reused package and introduced bless. So we could stay with package, use it as a class, and had to just reintroduce bless. Clever, but confusing. So the sysadmins were the main multipliers. The internet boom created a large need for computer programmers. They didn't have enough computer programmers, so they took the sysadmins. And the sysadmins entered in different problem domains like bioinformatics, data extraction, reporting, regexing, SQL, and so on. And when they brought Perl with them. So Perl is now dancing in practically all parties, and the sysadmins were the multipliers back then. But we had inconsistencies in the logic of Perl 5. Perl 4 was perfectly designed for the domain of shell and command line interfaces. Perl 5 allowed far more complex projects, clear, but built on the design of Perl 4, and it had always had Perl 4 in the DNA. Let me give you two examples. We had a lot of special variables. having special variables is good for Bash because you have a very concise syntax. These are only the special variables we use for regular expressions. But we create parsing problems because of all these punctuations. The parser becomes very hard to code. It's harder to remember and it's harder to look up. In JavaScript, these are attributes of a regex object. And because they are attributes of a regex object, it's far easier to look into the documentation what they actually do. Next example, the diamond operator. The diamond operator is either reading from a file handle or using as a file glob. These are two completely different usages. And we actually have a spelled out built-in functions, readline and glob. But the parser is still keeping the diamond operator alive. Thanks. So we come with a mortgage. We have this lack of orthogonality. In Perl 4, we had only package variables and aliasing was easy. You can't do this with private variables. If you have a variable with my, you can't alias x to y. With package variables, it's possible. This is not orthogonal. The documentation and the Perl box became increasingly complex. Code is harder to read and maintain. Consequence, higher demands on the developer. So I was talking about the multipliers. Am I too fast? Is it okay? Okay. I'm still in time. Who are the multipliers today? Now, we were talking about the sysadmins. Nowadays, we have teachers and academics who offer courses. Clearly multipliers, because the students learn what they are taught. And then we have self-taught hobby developers. We have professional developers who just want to have a 9-to-5 job. They make it for the money. We have open sourcers, the freaks, those who make who author or CPAN modules. We have employers and managers. They are business schoolers. They have a BA in administration. They're not really interested in software. They want to have the project done. We have domain specialists, the sysadmins, SQL, web, bioinformatics. We have much more domains than back in the 90s. And I'm not saying this is exclusive. Of course, we have overlaps between these groups. But these are important multipliers. So to analyze the perspective and criteria of these persons is crucial to know how easy, from their perspective, how easy is the entry level into Perl? How accessible is the documentation? Which development tools help me? How quick can I have results and can be motivated by the results? What are the packages available, the frameworks, and so on? It's a large field to make such analysis. We put just two groups now, the teachers and the academics. They want to know how good is the teaching material? How easy can I incorporate this into my curriculum? How scientific does the language represent itself? If you come from a mathematical background, you'll use the LaTeX, and you see Python, which is already intended. It looks like, this is, I call the LaTeX effect. I know when I wrote my thesis, I ran it the first time, it was complete shit what I wrote, the first version. I ran it through LaTeX and it looked like science. So this is what I call the LaTeX effect in Python. No, it doesn't no importance how bad the programmer is, it looks like science. How orthogonal and orthogonal or confusing is it? I talked already about the LaTeX effect. Then the other multiplier, the managers. They want to know what's the availability of developers in the company. Do I have them in the company? Do I find them in the open market? Can I train them myself? How well does the language sell? I mean, you know this saying, no manager was ever fired for buying IBM. Now, managers say the contrary about Perl now. Can I split it into a team of cheaper specialists? If you have domain specialists, a regex specialist, an SQL specialist, and so on, it might be cheaper than to have an all-rounder who knows everything. And can I have an IDE which produces quick results just by clicking through the IDE? Can I just set my trainee and please do a program? This is the manager perspective. So we are confronted with contradictions. And we have different domains and we have to fit into them. And is it even possible for Perl to fit into these requirements? And let's look at the history. I think this was one of the reasons why in Perl 6 the decision was made to make a complete redesign instead of staying compatible with Perl 5. Let's guess about an alternative reality. What would we, if we had tried to tailor Perl 5 with pragmas to have something called use precise for a super strict Perl, or use script for a bashy Perl? Practically we don't use pragmas, or use ECMA to generate JavaScript to tailor it down that it just is the baby Perl. Think of, it's maybe a bad comparison, but think about Visual Basic, which has VB, VBA, VBS. These are different engines, but we could use the same engine. And as a side remark, I originally wanted to call use precise use anal, like anal fixated, but you don't want to Google anal Perl. From a marketing perspective, I don't want that organizers of YAPCs have to say they never organize it again because of all the shitstorm which goes on then. So, my idea is using pragmas would tailor down Perl, and this is actually the same body, which can be projected into different things. And different pragmas could rule the syntax on top of the same op tree. So what would precise Perl be? Use precise, meticulous, super strict Perl, where the manager can say, oh, all my programmers have to follow the same rules. Strong limitation about allowed special variables. These are just guesses. I'm just asking the question, yes? Mapping the features to an object model like regex, special variables. Orthogonalizing language to make this paradoxes a bit less. Autoboxing methods. You know, now LaTeX killed me here. See, this is to make a push into a nested data structure. And this actually comes because I made the talk originally in German. I ran it through Google Translate to have a quick draft, and it introduced white spaces here everywhere. Sorry. So push, add, and then we have a nested data structure, and we have to go and back and make parentheses. And if we had autobox methods, there's a CPAN modules for decades already which does it. To just push, it makes it much more readable. Perl critic on a compiler level, maybe. Perl critic, I'm not a big fan of Perl critic, but a kind of Perl critic. Simplification of the tutorials, opinionated default formatting. Just make it easy to have a default format, a Perl tidy, which comes out of the box. These are sellers for managers. Script Perl, interactive REPL, which you can replace bash, piping, job management, ideal for sysadmins, ideal to try and error. ECMA Perl. There's obviously a need for meta JavaScript. Just look at Bubble, CoffeeScript, TypeScript. I forgot all the names. Perl could easily keep up. Semantically, JavaScript is more than 95% just a subset of Perl. It's just another syntax. And Brent Ike, I don't know if he says it already, I remember reading an interview where he said he was influenced by Perl. If you look at the array object in all of this, these are Perl terminologies he uses. So Perl would be available on all platforms again, because one of the selling points of Perl was it was available on all platforms. Platforms at that time meant Linux or Windows. Nowadays it's browsers and mobiles. And we could even have a strategic partnership with JavaScript. So we would have well-defined application domains, a clear terminology and definition, because also when we discuss what to do with Perl, I think a lot of energy is lost when people are talking about different features. And I will go 5 minutes into the pause. Sorry, guys. Talking about different features, and they have different goals in mind, and we could have a clear terminology, and they would know what they're talking about. This feature is important for Bashy Perl. This feature is important for Anal Perl. And tool support, IDEs, training, documentation. The improvement would be better profile, better arguments, better communication, better marketing. We'd allow a project to be born on the command line and to grow step to step to a script and then to a larger platform with modules, with an independent object framework. How? Just migrating from Pragma to Pragma. Because our unique selling point would be that it's still the same engine. Same engine means all the modules would still work, no matter in which pragmas they would. You could use in the command line interface a module which is written in object-oriented framework and so on. And then we could generate automatic or semi-automatic migration from something which started as a baby on the command line to the full, and show me any language which is capable to do this. So it would be, you could start as Chaka Khan in one of her incarnations, and then you can migrate. This is the idea of this image. And now I'm nearly at the end of my talk. So clear, short recap. I was trying to tell you that Perl is in a paradox situation. Although it's well addressing most domains, it has a fuzzy profile for historic reasons. Key multipliers are unaware about the features of Perl because of this fuzzy profile. Pragmas may sharpen the profile. Perl could be then a lifelong companion, and we would have a unique selling point with this. So I wanted to start a discussion because I don't know if I was giving the right answers. My request to you is to ask the right questions. I was trying to give the right questions. What is Perl? In which situation is it? What was Perl? What's the situation now? So ask yourself the right questions, then we can find the right answers. Thank you. Questions? Or do we have to stop, Lee?